So let's call this 3 traits of an irresistible lover and why trying just doesn't work. We're going to talk about how you can get a lover to go from "you're just too good for me" to "you make me want to be a better person." Okay. If you're just joining me here in this group for the first time, or you don't know me that well, my name is Brianna Mack, and I'm an author, educator, and licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist. I've been in the field for about 13 years now, and I'm just wild about helping individuals struggling with insecure attachment go from feeling fearful or confused in their relationships to stepping into what I call your self-sovereignty. And I do that using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions with attachment theory. And my method is called the Mack Method, which stands for Mastery, Awareness, and Creativity. And there are 3 basic steps, and that is cognitive reframing, body activation, and arts-based experientials. To begin, what does it take to be an irresistible lover? Well, the radical truth about this is that it has nothing to do with how many degrees you have, or what a great conversationalist you can be, or how pretty or handsome you look, or your fabulous fashion sense, or the size of your bank account, or how good you are in bed, or how well you can predict and meet a partner's needs without them ever having to lift a finger. And so every minute that you spend trying to impress a partner or take care of them or save them or function as some kind of surrogate therapist or do anything that suggests that you need to prove yourself to them in some fashion is usually a waste of time and energy, and it is going to backfire on you. And it backfires in typically one of 2 ways. And so in the first way, you attract a lukewarm partner who kind of goes along with it for a while because you make it oh so easy for them. Number 2, maybe you attract a fiery partner who appears to be all in at first, and then after a while, they're kind of abruptly all out. The key to having that kind of soul-shaking love that I'm always talking about is access to your emotions, right? It is getting to a lover's heart, and the only way to do that is to live in residence within your own heart as well. Now, I know, especially in this group, you might be thinking, but my heart is on my sleeve. I am already an open wound. But the reality is that's probably not what you're communicating. It's an overextending of yourself, and that's actually a form of abandoning your own heart. And so these are those 3 traits of an irresistible lover. So number 1, the ability to receive. Now, have you ever had the experience of somebody offering to help you with something, and you feel compelled to respond with something like, "No thanks, I got it"? It's likely that no one's actually questioning your capacity to do it by yourself, but what they are asking is, how can I give to you? In what ways can I express my affection for you? Or how can I be a part of your life? Will you let me be close to you in this way? And so inspiring a lover to see you as the one that they want to be with is really all about letting them know how they can contribute to you and to the potential relationship you might have together. And so the best way to do that is to allow yourself to receive without criticism or platitudes or politeness. People pleasers, and open hearts in particular, often struggle to receive, and I would say that's for 3 reasons. And the first reason is because they don't want to be thought of as burdensome. The second is they don't want to become too dependent on a partner's generosity, lest their partner ultimately leave and abandon them. And lastly, generosity perhaps has come at a painful cost. And so they are suspicious of what kind of payment is going to be extracted for that generosity later on. And so remaining in a giving versus a receiving position kind of keeps us in a position of relative control. But unfortunately, it also keeps us thoroughly unavailable. And so when you are open to receiving from a lover, you're kind of sending the message to them that you value yourself and that you believe that you are worthy of the time, attention, gifts, gestures, and ultimately their love. Okay. Now, the second thing is the ability to set and sustain personal boundaries. Now, personal boundaries are, in essence, what ultimately defines your character. So they are what you like and what you don't like. They are what you will and will not do. They are what turns you on and what turns you off. And your emotions are usually wonderful indicators of when a boundary is being encroached upon. So strong and uncomfortable feelings like anxiety or anger or fear are really good at showing you where your boundaries may need to be clarified. If we search for, let's say, a quick short-term escape, right, to get rid of that scary or unacceptable feeling of anxiety, anger, or fear, we can't access what's lying beneath it. And as a result, that's actually a form of self-abandonment. But more often than not, boundaries can display themselves in small and seemingly benign ways. And in relationships, we're frequently testing each other's boundaries, kind of subconsciously assessing our compatibility and our long-term relationship potential as a result of it. So I'm going to give you a personal example. In a previous relationship, an ex and I would debate the plot lines of character arcs for the movies that we would watch. He was a screenwriter, and if you can't tell, I'm obsessed with character and personality development. And so we'd have these really long conversations and debates over it. And one evening, we were quoting movie lines to one another, and my ex, in his best Jack Nicholson voice, said to me, "You make me want to be a better man." He laughed. We had a good laugh over it, but then his face got very straight and he got very serious and he said, "No, but you know what? I really mean that. It's true." And of course, my heart melted. And I asked him, well, how did he know that he felt that way? And he said that he felt it was because of our ability to sometimes agree and sometimes disagree in this particular area that he was actually pretty passionate about. Because with his previous relationships and girlfriends, let's say they would come out of a movie and he would ask them what they thought, and they would kind of deflect the question and they would say, well, what did you think? And he would express his opinion, and inevitably they would always agree with him. And so he felt that was a huge turnoff for him. And it told him that there was no challenge there. There was no intellectual stimulation. There was just someone who would always be in deference to him. And so it actually, in his mind, felt that that meant that there was no long-term potential there. And he couldn't explain, because there was never any conflict in the relationship. It was hard to explain why he wanted to break up to his girlfriend and also to everyone that knew them. And the last thing is the ability to self-advocate, which of course is right in line with what it is that we're talking about here today. Self-advocacy is really about discovering your passions. It's about being on fire about life and being lit up in this way with or without a partner. And my ability to hold my own opinion in a debate about character structure, with my screenwriting ex-boyfriend, for example, is a demonstration of self-advocacy, because a lot of times I did feel intimidated considering his education and his experience, but I knew how I felt and I knew what I actually thought, and no amount of his persuasion could change my felt experience of the topic. Right? And so my ability to define and articulate my experience actually afforded him an opportunity to see it from a different point of view, which, even though we might have disagreed, he still found to be stimulating, exciting, and ultimately irresistible. And so I'd have you, think of it this way. If you're single and you have the option of dating someone who is passionate about what they do, and they are lit up with excitement about all that life has to offer, and they're intrigued about your passions as well, right? Are you going to want to date that person? Or are you going to want to date the person who hates their date job, always looks on the dark side of life, has been depressed since their last breakup, and wants to make you into their only source of happiness, and gets offended unless you turn them into your only source of happiness, right? Who is it that you would prefer to date? The first option is the only sustainable option long term. Right? The second option is kind of like trying to survive underwater with only one oxygen take between the two of you. And you will always be tossing that energy back and forth between you. And so the relationship is never really able to expand beyond that kind of volleying of in a game of power plays and survival fears, more or less at the shallow end of the pool. But when you both have the ability to self-advocate, that's kind of like saying, hey, here's my tank, show me yours. Okay, cool. Now we can go deep diving together. And so the 3 best ways to remain in resonance with your own heart and be comfortable with just being who you are is to adopt those 3 traits. And again, that is the ability to receive, the ability to hold your own personal boundaries, and lastly, the ability to self-advocate.